This is one of the most iconic symbols of America, a beacon of hope and acceptance for immigrants everywhere. So how did coming to this country become a crime?
Illegal immigrant.
Illegal immigrants.
Illegal criminal alien.
If we look at the history of immigration in this country, being illegal usually just means being unwanted. And more often than not, that has to do with race and ethnicity. For a long time, there was no such thing as an illegal immigrant in the US because there weren't any immigration laws. In the early days, European settlers came over and claimed Native American land as their own, and Africans were brought here against their will on slave ships. When the US established a government, immigrants flocked to the land that promised equality and freedom, and the border was open. But very soon, it became clear that not everybody who could make it here was welcome. The Naturalization Act, signed by George Washington in 1790, said only white people could become citizens. And every wave of newcomers was met with resentment by the Anglo-Saxon Protestants who claimed they were here first. Even white immigrants like Italians and the Irish were discriminated against for being Catholic. By the late 19th century, immigrants from China were also living in the US. And as the country went through an economic recession, they became the target of blame for widespread unemployment. So Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, the first major federal immigration law restricting entry into the US. It banned nearly all immigrants from China. This was the first time the federal government regulated who was a legal immigrant. Then in the early 1900s, eugenics became popular, which basically legitimized racism as science. It was founded on a racial hierarchy with the Northern Europeans at the very top. Its influence was so powerful that it was reflected in the next major federal immigration law signed in 1924. The law set up a nationality-based quota system that capped immigration from Southern and Eastern Europe and banned essentially all Asians. At this point, mentions of illegal immigrants started showing up in major newspapers. In the 60s, the US finally moved to get rid of the racist quota system. The 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act reopened borders to Asian immigrants, especially the professionals. But it also added restrictions to a different group. For the first time, there was a cap on immigration from Latin America. Almost overnight, many Mexicans and Latin Americans who legally crossed the border to find work, including those encouraged by a US government program, suddenly became illegal. We are still dealing with the consequences of that law today. Those who are deemed illegal in this country have always changed with time. But the reason to keep certain groups out has remained the same. Newcomers, especially those who look different, are seen as a threat to white Americans' jobs, identities, and way of life. Who's considered legal all depends on when you start the clock.